Hey, welcome to another episode of Coffee HEMA with me, Jamie McKeever. I think this is going to be my last video about judging and judging styles. I've got some more thoughts on tournament rules I want to go back to. And in this video, I'm going to deliver on something that I think I promised in a previous video and kind of forgot about, which is that I said I'd talk a bit about kind of how to handle conflict as a judge, or really how to sort of warn offences and kind of correct behaviour as things go. Which is quite an important topic. It's something that people are generally quite bad at. Judges are quite inconsistent in general about when they warn. Some judges will kind of give warnings more frequently, and just in case you're not familiar, what I mean by warnings, for things like excessive force, fencing after the halt, striking illegal targets, and this kind of stuff. Illegal targets people tend to be relatively good at giving warnings for, but things like excessive force and stuff like that, it's very inconsistent. Partly because it's quite hard to judge, right? It's quite hard to say the difference between these two are very enthusiastic and they're going too hard and they're going to hurt someone. So that is a challenge. But there are different kind of ways of recording this and managing it, and there's sort of two aspects I want to touch upon. One is the difference between kind of unofficial and official warnings. And cards, red cards or whatever you happen to do. And the other is about how you then approach it once you have to give a warning or kind of prevent it. I'll say two aspects of that. So the most important thing I want to get across though is that the purpose of a warning, right? The purpose of all these things about whether you're warning someone officially or unofficially, giving a point deduction or doing anything here, the main thing you want is for them to correct their behavior, right? That is the outcome you want to achieve. It's not about telling them off. It's not about punishing them. It's about, here's something that happened and I don't want it to happen again. So whatever the success here, right? The success here is not that they got knocked out of the tournament or got penalized. The success is that thing stops, right? Whether they stop it or whether they're kicked out, that it's no longer happening. That then changes how you approach whether you give official warnings or not, and that changes how you want to tackle actually giving warnings. And I think regardless of whether they are official or verbal or whatever you want to call that, which I'll come back to and how to split that, when you're warning someone, I think it's very important to moderate and understand how your tone is going to affect their reaction to it, and moderate your tone accordingly, right? So I've had situations before, not me, but at tournaments I've been at, where the judge has warned the fencer and they have absolutely shouted telling him off. They're like shouted, "Warning! Don't do that!" Right? And while sometimes if something is super egregious, yet it can have that kind of visceral reaction to you. There are afterblows of certain famous fencers that I don't want to get the controversy of talking about now. A good example for this. For the most part, when you're giving someone a warning, you should try and make it not necessarily friendly, but non-confrontational, right? And I've gone up to fencers, as I've said, and generally speaking, I will approach a fencer first and explain it to them before I give my decision about warning, unless it's something obvious like hitting the floor or back of the head. But I'll generally go up to them and say, look, the force levels here are way higher than I'm happy with. You were going too hard. You're going to cause an injury. I want to see them coming down. I'm going to be giving you an official warning for this. Please don't do it. So I don't want to escalate this any further, right? You're telling them that this is what they've done. You're telling them what you need them to correct. This is their behavior. And I think it's much better to have that direct conversation rather than to stand there with a head judge and just say, warning, excessive force, right? You need to explain what's going on. If there's some obvious thing, right, that's causing that excessive force, like I've had one before where someone was doing in saber super big windy upcuts to the leg, like really proper powering it from the shoulder and coming down. And I was telling them that big wind up, I'm always going to be calling excessive force because it looks like they're super powering it. And they make this massive sound as well when they hit the plastic. So don't wind it up so much, just do a small motion, right? Tell them that. Tell them how to correct their behavior. Generally speaking, if you start confrontationally, people will get defensive, people will get their back up. I wasn't doing excessive force, right? And that's why you want to start non-confrontationally as far as possible before you then go back and do the warning. Now, what I just described, some people would consider to be an unofficial warning. And sometimes people do that. They sort of go, they do that. I have moved away from wanting to ever give unofficial warnings. In fact, at Wessex now, we tell people that there's no such thing, that all warnings are official and get recorded in the system. At Wessex, we have a system where the first warnings for an offence don't cause point deductions, and if they escalate, they can cause point deductions unless it's egregious. And we have a no colour, yellow, red, black for the severity and point deduction, and they're separate, right? So a bunch of low severity warnings is going to get your point deduction. A single high severity warning is going to get your point deduction. But why did we move away from verbal warnings? What we currently have is a no point deduction, no colour warning. We used to do as a verbal warning, and particularly it's important for organisers and for other judges to be able to see what happened, not just the one in your piece, as someone progresses through the tournament or goes for another tournament. And HEMA scorecard tracks warnings and lets you see them from prior events in that tournament, so prior tournaments in that event, so the table staff can tell the judge, this guy's already been warned 3 times for excessive force, right? So you know to watch for that and you know to understand it. And then me as an organiser, I take an extract of that and I review it, because the tournament managers can't see everything that we've got, and it allows you to sort of see if there's somebody there's a trend over time of, this person appears in 5 different pieces with 5 different judges and they've all one of them excessive force, that's a problem. And if you do have someone like that, then I would probably go to them in the next event. I'd probably go to them at the start of the event and say, look, it's been a bunch of warnings against you for excessive force. I really want to see the force level coming down, right? This can't continue, and this goes up, and I might brief a judge ahead of time as well, depending on how egregious it happens to be. But and again, all of this is about not about punishing people, not about trying to kick people out. Right? It's not about that. It's about trying to say, we want to see safe fencing on the piste, and if we're warning you, the purpose of that warning is for you to get better, right? You to get better and stop fencing unsafely. And everything you should be doing as a judge, as a tournament organizer, you want to keep it low conflict, low confrontational, because that means that you're not getting the adrenaline up, getting them defensive. In many ways, if you're too aggressive in terms of how you warn, you're going to make things worse because they're going to be more stressed, and people under stress do stupid things. So you're trying to manage that conflict and manage to keep it down. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say about warnings, except for, I guess, that they are important, and all judges, like, if you've never given a warning, you need to take a look in the mirror and understand why, and you probably should have done. It's probably not that the fences didn't deserve a warning, it's probably that you weren't clear enough with them, because there are some judges who just never warn, and yeah, you really should. Thanks for watching, and I'd say I'm going to go back to kind of rules design in my next videos.